The second key for us, if we're going to be future fit as an industry, and I think for every industry this is super relevant, but in this space it's especially so. And that is the importance of thinking curiosity and not certainty. And I get it, in an era where things are changing so rapidly, there's often this instinctive draw in all of us to retreat to what we know, what feels certain, what feels predictable, what feels safe. And I get it. I understand why we do that. I mean, as human beings, we love feeling safe. One of the things our brains will do more than anything else is try and make us feel safe. In fact, interestingly, our brains would rather feel right than be right, which is interesting in itself, and I'll just let that linger for a few moments. But like, certainty is so alluring, but it's also one of the most dangerous places we can stay right now. Because in a time of rapid change, the reality is certainty becomes a shackle. It holds you back. It stops you from changing and adapting anywhere near as frequently as you need to. In fact, a book I'd highly recommend you get a copy of if you want some Christmas reading that's going to make you feel really smart, or just give you some clever stuff to share with people in your family to make you sound especially intelligent. This book here is a really good one to check out. It's called Superforecasting. It's an excellent book. It's a bit dense in a few points, but there's some great insights in here, because the guy who wrote this, Philip Tetlock, has spent 2 decades, he's based over at Wharton School at Penn University, 2 decades looking at why some leaders and organisations gear up well for the future. They sort of forecast, predict what's coming and get ready for it, while other leaders get caught off guard by the future. And what are the differences between those two sets? And if you were to sum up that 20 years of research, and in fact this entire book in one sentence, this would be a fairly good summation right here. Tetlock says that the essential factor in being future fit is not intelligence. It's curiosity. It's humility. It's having that posture of open-mindedness where you're willing to adapt and reassess and rethink things you've assumed to be true for a really long time. Now, that's easier said than done, and you know that as well as I do. It was interesting, I was chatting with a client probably just over a year back now, and she's the CEO of a big retail business here in Australia, and she was so excited because she said that they had just spent the last 18 months at this point spending a fortune building a new back-end system for their sales team around the country. And she said their old sales system, like the sales support system, was built in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was DOS-based. It didn't interact with social media at all. They had no ability to do dynamic pricing or coupons for Instagram. It just wasn't fit for purpose. And she showed me what they had just built, and it was unreal. They'd spent so much money developing this system that was all social media integrated. It was super clever, super easy to use on phones as well as computers, the whole deal. And so I saw her a few months ago and said, how's it gone? Because she was about to release it when I last saw her. And I expected her to be all frothy and excited, like, it's been awesome, I can't believe we didn't do it earlier. That wasn't her vibe at all. She actually looked frazzled. And she said, I tell you what, it has been a nightmare. I said, what's going on? And she said, we released this, and I thought everyone would be super excited about it. The amount of pushback we've had has been huge. We've had some of our franchisees want to hand back their licenses. We've had salespeople resign. Everyone wants to go back to the old system. She said, this was her phrase, I'm amazed at how afraid of change our people are. I just never assumed they'd be so fearful of change. Now, this whole theme has really been at the core of my research for a good 8 or 9 years now. In fact, for those of you who sort of follow me online, you probably have noticed the sort of shift for me research-wise has not just been looking at the whole theme of where's the world going, how do we get ready for the future, but looking at the people side of change. Particularly the research that I've been doing is around the psychology of stubbornness. Now, why do we as humans so often dig our heels in and not change, even when we want to? Even when we know we should, even when we're fully aware of all the benefits of changing, why do we so often get resistant, defensive, stubborn? And what's interesting is this, if you look at the last sort of 10 to 15 years from a neuroscience standpoint, what we've learned is that humans aren't actually afraid of change. This is what my client assumed, and many of us do assume, and that's just why we get resistant, we're afraid of change. It's not true. You and I are not afraid of change. And this is so important to get your head around as you think about how do you lead people who might be resistant. We're not afraid of change. You know what we're afraid of? Do you know what causes us to be stubborn? It's a fear of loss. The moment there is loss involved in change, that's when we dig our heels in, even against our better interests. And there are 3 losses you've got to be super aware of when it comes to the things that stop us adapting, changing, being curious, being open-minded. The first is the fear of a loss of power. This idea that I had power before. If we change, I might lose some of the power I once had. Now, you see this in non-profits, industry associations all the time. The people who've risen through the ranks to be on the board, and they've got a power base now. And if there's change, that might mean they lose power. They'll dig their heels in. at every point. Or sometimes you see the impact of a loss of dignity. The moment ego gets involved, it's amazing how quickly we'll get stubborn. Well, the last one is the big one, and that's a loss of familiarity. You know, as humans, we will often choose unhappiness over unfamiliarity. And some of you need to hear this. Because as humans, we'll so often stay in roles, in jobs, in ways of doing things, even in relationships that suck, that aren't serving us, that are even toxic in some cases, but yeah, the fear of the unknown is so great, the unfamiliar. The devil you know is better than the one you don't. And so we've got to be so mindful of when we're trying to lead people through change, what are those losses that might cause them to put the handbrake on and try and lessen those losses? But also, how do we be mindful of this within ourselves? But what I would simply say is this: it's hard to overstate how important it is for us to stay humble and open and curious. I love this insight from one of the OG futurists. Alvin Toffler put it best when he said this, decades ago now. He said, the illiterate of the future won't be those who can't read and write. It'll be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. That unlearning piece, that's where curiosity comes in.